So what does it mean to steal like an artist?
Well, we have bestselling author Austin Kleon who will tell us how.
This week on Make It.
All right, Austin, good to have you here, man.
Good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Best-selling author.
I'm super pumped because I followed your blackout stuff for a very long time.
Newspaper blackouts. That's how maybe a lot of people were first introduced to you.
Back in the day, yeah, that was kind of how I got my start. And it was purely because it was a case of writer's block. And I was staring at my Microsoft Word screen, how the cursor, it just blinks like a taunt. Like, hey man, what do you got for me? Come on,
Give me something now.
Come on.
Give me something now.
Yeah, I would just stare at the screen. I didn't have any words, and we subscribed to the New York Times, and I would look at the recycle bin. I'd be like, well, there's a bunch of words there. Why can't I borrow some of those words? And that's how the blackout started.
That's awesome.
So. Borrowed some and made something entirely new and different, which is fun.
That's the idea.
And
that's
lo-fi, if you will. Like, that's super fun. You know?
So, I've always been interested in the kind of the interplay between analog and digital. So those blackout poems, that's just a piece of newsprint and a marker. But then there's something about when you scan that into the computer and make it play with the levels a little bit, make it kind of black and white. This kind of transformation happens, and it becomes this kind of new piece. And so that was always fun for me. And that's true in all my work. A lot of it, pretty much all of it starts by hand, or it starts analog, and then it goes into the computer and gets kind of shuffled around and stuff.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I will say, so we are talking about, we can talk about all your work, steal like an artist, which is awesome. Show your work. So steal and then show.
Steal and show. It's the Robin Hood box set.
But first
you steal, then you share.
It's so inspiring to just actually create. It's so interesting and not worry about where your influences come from or really what you're doing. It's like totally takes off all those issues that you might have floating around in your head, like, oh, I stole this idea from someone else, or you know what I'm saying? Like, you got inspired by it.
I think traditionally our idea of creativity is that you try to reach down deep into your soul and pull something out, right? Like it's that you as an individual. But all of our ideas are formed by other people's ideas. I mean, all of our creative work becomes what it is in contact with the world. And so what Steal Like an Artist is really about is, instead of trying to be original and keep yourself kind of cordoned off and separate from the world, embrace as many influences as possible and embrace a wide, disparate range of influences. I think like Quentin Tarantino is a perfect example of the Steal Like an Artist thing. He's someone who is gobbled up all these movies. He's watched all these movies. He has this encyclopedic knowledge of movies. And then when he goes to make one of his own, there's a voice and a story there that's his, but he's taken all these pieces and put it to something new.
And that's what I think is so interesting. Is like it's almost impossible to really remove yourself from anything that you create.
So
just kind of interesting.
This is a really interesting point, because there is something in the process. You can't help but express yourself. So like the blackout poems are a really interesting example. You could give 100 people the same newspaper article, but they're going to get something different out of it because they're going to be looking for particular things. They're going to have experiences that are different, and they're just going to make something new. So you could give 100 people the same materials, and they're going to make 100 different things.
Yeah, totally. And that's awesome. And that's what I think, you're kind of approaching, you speak to me as a designer, as to, sure, how do I label myself? And then you think, okay, well, I should be inspired, and then I can do the work, and it has to be original. And it's all these things that you're saying, you know what? No, just do the work. Or even like it says right here, don't wait until you know who you are to get started, which is your second point on this, which is, again, super interesting.
This is something that comes up a lot. People think that I'm going to do my great work once I figure myself out. I have to go to Paris, and I have to live in an apartment, or London, or I have to, move to New York City and discover myself before I'm able to do what I need to do. And what I think is true of creative work is that you discover yourself through making the work. it's by doing your work that you uncover who you are and what you value and what's inside of you.
Yeah. No, that's
So how did all these words of wisdom come about?
Well, I steal them. You know, I mean, I'm a student. I think for what I do, a certain kind of scholarly collector. I think of myself as a collector, really. I'm always on the lookout for, when I was coming up, I didn't go to art school. So I was always looking for artist interviews, and I was always scouring blog posts and stuff for little tidbits of knowledge that I could use in my own work. And that's really what Steal Like an Artist was. It was just a collection of stuff that it was kind of like the first album for a band where they have a bunch of songs they've written for like a decade and then the first album rules. But Steal Like an Artist is really a collection of stuff that I had written and come across in like my first decade of trying to do this for myself. And so if the book seems personal, that's why, because, I think, again, don't wait until you know who you are to get started. A lot of people think that authors write books because they have something to say that they want everyone to hear. Well, actually, a lot of books are an author trying to figure out what they think. And in the process, they create this thing that speaks to other people.
So what's it like to be, boom, mic drop, Still Like an Artist, and then show
and then you
your
have
work?
to like, follow up and like,
And you have to
come
encore.
on, it's that sophomore release.
Yeah, and your sophomore, your follow-up, you always have something to prove. So this one's thicker, and the illustrations are a little more like, a little more textured and more about providing atmosphere than necessarily like big banner headlines and stuff like that. Steal Like an Artist is like, you can do anything, go for it. And Show Your Work is a book that's about you have to put a little bit more on the table if you want to get discovered, because this book is really about getting discovered. It's a book about self-promotion for people who hate self-promotion.
Yeah.
And you have to wager a little bit more. You have to be willing to reveal more. And I think that book is, Show Your Work is a little bit harder for people because it's actually going to be work.
A lot of this is like, hey, sit down with a pen and paper and just draw. And also, I'm sure some of your best ideas have come from when you're not working. Is that?
Oh,
has that
yeah. That's a
on
great
a
point.
walk or who knows what?
Playing the piano, you'll get an idea for, a piece of writing. If you're doodling, you'll get a book idea. If you're writing, you get and then, just unplugging, taking a walk. I think walking is like the greatest creative juicer, And so my wife and I take this really long 3-mile walk every morning with our kids. I push the 70 pounds of kid in a stroller. And I think doing the dishes, I love doing dumb things.
Just boring.
Boring, repetitive, things that you can do with your hands that free up your brain that you can just think of. So doing the dishes, all the stuff I hated to do as a kid, just finding these kind of, because you have to do these domestic chores anyway. So if you can do them in this,
methodical things.
yeah.
And you're not even doing it with like the intent of, I'm going to come up with a great idea. I'm going to go iron. It's like...
Well, that's like when people are in the shower, that's when they get
Yeah.
good ideas because you get relaxed and it's warm and you're doing things that you've done a million
Sadly, it
times
doesn't
before.
seem to work the opposite way. I'm going to take a shower so I come up with a good idea.
Right, exactly. And that is part of the zen of doing creative work too. It's that when you really don't want something, that's when you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then actually acting on it. Because how many times have we said, oh, I had that idea. Oh, I already wrote this book in my head, 5 years ago. But who
Yeah.
actually did it? You sit down, you put in the work at the end of the day, too.
It's
You've
like in
shown
the,
it. I'm not to interrupt, but I'm so
Sure.
curious about, now you are taking these longer walks. I'm kind of wondering what's knocking around in your head right now.
Yeah. What's
Like-
the next thing?
oh,
Yeah, I'm kind of, what are you thinking about lately?
So I have 2 little boys. I have basically a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old right now. And watching them discover their world and use drawing and building and writing and reading to construct their model of reality has been really, really influential to me. And so I'm thinking about what artists, creative people, and really all, because we're all creative, what you can learn from children for your own practice. So I'm thinking about that a lot. But I actually, Do you guys know the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray? I think that's what being an artist is like. You wake up every day and you have what are you going to do next? And it's just this endless cycle of like, what are you going to do with your day? What are you going to make today? My son's like that. He wakes up in the morning and he goes out and he starts on something. He doesn't have any concept of like, well, yesterday I drew a car, so today I should probably draw a horse. No, he's going to draw another car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's going to do that until he's gotten to where he needs to be, and then he's going to go to something else. But there's not that endless
dilemma.
struggle with himself about what he's going to do,
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, amazing what you learn from your kids. I'm just trying to get a takeaway from you. Like, there's so much to take away from all of this.
I can give you a quick list.
Which is awesome. You can.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
we have a list here.
I don't want
Yeah,
to turn into a... Yeah, I love lists. Invest in your tools. Make them available. And then work in a way that you're not constantly judging what you do. Put your stuff aside for a while. Make something, put it aside, come back later, and you can be the editor.
It's like what I'm learning is just to unlearn things.
Yeah.
Really.
I think that's as adult. There's a great Picasso line. He says, all children are artists. The problem is how to remain one when you grow up. And I think for a lot of us, it's about unlearning the bad habits that we've learned as adults.
Well, we totally didn't learn anything from you today. I'm kidding.
This was super fun. Thank you.
Dude, we're going to keep track of you online, too. We're
Great.
excited about what's next for you.
Yeah,
I'm excited,
Wow.
too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Austin
Thanks.
Kleon. Thanks for watching, everybody.